Today, Nick and I are in the hills around Big Bear doing a little mountain goating with the 2024 F-150 Tremor. And this Tremor is just one of many off-road offerings available in the F-150 lineup. But each of them has something a little bit more unique, and each comes with its own unique capabilities. The question here is this the right one for you? And today we'll explore what it can do and let you make that decision for yourself. We'll start here at the front of the Tremor, where it starts to differentiate itself amongst the other F-150 offerings. And the biggest, most obvious one is also going to be one of my favorites, and that happens here in the off-color accent. Now this is the Tremor orange gold design. You'll see it implemented into the coast-to-coast grille that we do find on all the new 2024 F-150s, but it's also going to carry into the headlights as well. Obviously, these are going to be a more standard orange, but overall, it's a pretty attractive design that, again, differentiates itself as different from the rest of the lineup. We don't see that FORD grille, but I would probably be okay with taking this one over spending the extra money for that Raptor. We do get LED taillights, and as an option that you do find in the Raptor is going to be a modular bumper. Now this is going to make it so you can do things like add a factory mounted winch, and that's always going to be a big benefit because you do get the manufacturer warranty along with it, and knowing that it's designed to work with things like your radar and parking sensors is definitely a benefit for folks who are going to be using this plenty on-road and not just off-road. Now it's a very small piece, but you may have noticed that this doesn't have any other orange lights because this is not quite wide enough to need the orange running lights. But as it so happens, there are 3 distinct slots here that I think it'd be pretty easy to get a aftermarket orange light kit, and I suspect you will see some of those here on the Tremor. And earlier, if I did say tail lights, of course I meant headlights. My apologies on that one. Lastly, up front, or at least mostly lastly, is that we do have the big tow hooks up front. Now, if for any off-road vehicle, what you don't want to do is get stuck. And if you do get stuck, you need a way to get out. So good news, they have them here. They aren't painted red or orange. They are pretty well disguised here. And I think that's a distinct choice, but since every other tow hook option tends to be on the brighter side, I don't mind this being just a little bit different. The next piece of the puzzle is going to be one of the more important for folks who are going to be dedicated to off-road driving, and that's the fact that this comes standard with factory 33-inch tires, and under here we have a unique suspension to the Tremor that you don't find on the rest of the F-150 lineup. The shocks here are going to be just a little bit different and designed to handle that rough terrain better than your average run-of-the-mill Lariat or King Ranch. So far, the Tremor has shown to be a little bit more sure-footed than myself, so hopefully I don't slip and fall here, but you can see here in the rear we have tons of articulation, but that's just one of the features we find in this particular trim. Now there are 2 equipment groups, and this one happens to be pretty fully loaded. So what we do get is Ford's new Pro Access tailgate, which you can access here as a swing out. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this is going to be a great overlanding option for folks who do want to tow a small trailer, because at the closest detent, this is going to be designed to open to 37 degrees, and in theory, if you have a trailer, you shouldn't bump into any part of that trailer. If you're not towing, no problem. This floats out to 70 and then 100 degrees, giving you easy access to the rest of the bed. And as it turns out, we're currently carrying an air compressor because as soon as we got off the road, we went ahead and aired down. And the fact is, this also is equipped with the Pro Power. So we are running our air compressor that is off of our own truck that's more easily accessible than it would be if this was being used as a traditional tailgate. Obviously, you can use it as a traditional tailgate. And in that case, it is a power unit, power up and power down. Please excuse all the equipment laying about. We have been on the road for most of the day, but what you'll notice here is that this is a very similar interior to what you find through the rest of the F-150 lineup. The driver and infotainment screens here are going to be standard across the lineup, and that's going to be great for everyone, but especially if you are going to get the Tremor version. If we switch this into off-road mode, one of the first things that it's going to do is give us our forward-facing camera. And while we've been out here, we've been able to make pretty good use of this because this is a pretty tall truck, like most trucks in the segment. So having the ability to look over the hood and under basically the bumper gives you a really good idea of where you're going. And even though this does have underbody protection, it helps you avoid using that more than you absolutely have to. When we switch to off-road mode, we did also get a different display here for the driver. You'll notice that there are going to be a number of angles. We get pitch, roll. We also get our steering input. So right now we are 21 degrees to the right. And a lot of this information is going to be displayed on the heads-up display, which you do get with the upgraded interior packaging. if we go here from normal mode and switch on over to tow haul, you'll see that we have another number of changes that are going to be made to some of the programming, some of the shift status, but also this exists because amongst the standard features is going to be things like your trailer brake controller here, and that's going to be located just above your drive mode selector, which includes your 2 high, 4 low, and automatic 4-wheel drive. The rest of this interior is going to be adorned with Tremor accents. That's going to be that yellow gold stitching, as well as Tremor here in the passenger and driver front seat backrests. And that does carry over all the way into the rear seats, because you can never have enough Tremor, apparently. Now that the rain has crept in for a little bit, let's quit talking about it while we stand here, and let's talk about it a little bit more on the road. Now, to get these off-road, we have to go on-road to get there, and that's going to be the case for most vehicles, especially these off-road trucks, but that off-road segment keeps growing, and we have two very different entrants in the Tremor and the Raptor R. But what do you think about spending so much time here on the highway in an off-road truck?
Yeah, we've been driving for maybe like 15, 20 minutes, and it's actually impressive. We have 33-inch all-terrain tires, off-road tuned suspension, things of that nature, and also more ground clearance, and it still drives like a normal F-150 would, and that's how you want it to be, given the fact that these are very expensive trucks. And like, that's kind of what's funny is about a lot of these manufacturers is they're dipping their toe into the off-road segment, and Ford kind of is just like, all right, hold my beer, watch this, and they go above and beyond. Tremor is now its own trim level. It is not a package, and this is based off of the Lariat trim. Am I right? I think I might be off on that.
Well, and I mean, you're right. It's a whole new truck. It's got two different packages, so you can get a less expensive or more expensive depending on how much equipment you want. But it's a significant step up from the FX4, which used to be the everyday off-road trim. Then obviously the Raptor's been around for a while, but most of these are going to spend time on road, and I don't think it's a secret, but off-road trucks tend to drive a little bit better on road because that suspension is designed to absorb more impact, more undulation. But then obviously when you do more specific off-road tuning, you lose things like towing and payload because that suspension isn't designed to hold the rest of the load. So
a little bit softer.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance, and this has been plenty comfortable. We don't have the standard 5-liter V8. We actually have the upgraded EcoBoost, the 3.5 V6. And the only thing we can't do in this model is get the power boost, which I do think is a bit of a shame, because if I was going to be building an overland vehicle or something like that, I would love to have the power boost. Just the added efficiency means that your gas tank gets you that much farther, and you have so much power. Now, this does have Pro Power, but you could do the Pro Power 7.2 kilowatts from the power boost, and that means you could take this anywhere and do just about anything with it.
Yeah, this is 2.4 kilowatts, not 7.2. Yeah, so it's like, the power boost would be a nice addition to this, but this is an off-road trim, so I would assume that the buyer is going to be, or I guess the buyers are more limited than you would find in like a Lariat or a Platinum or even like a King Ranch. Like King Ranch is a little bit more specific, but I don't think there's going to be as many people buying these vehicles, and so I think they kind of just reserve the power boost and maybe encourage you to move up or move down to, or move up to a different trim level. But overall, this truck drives amazing on road. Even though it is off-road oriented, it drives just as it should for in the $60,000 range.
I mean, just for example, I have a heads-up display. This truck has a Blue Cruise, which is the hands-free driving system for Ford. It's got standard big screens. It's not like it just has increased shocks and stronger, more durable, differentials, but there's so much technology that goes into this, including things like your downhill, descent control and
trail turn control.
Exactly.
We'll test that out today. We're going to be heading off-road. We're heading to an air up and air down location so we can air down the tires. So when we get off-road, we have a little bit of extra cushion in those 33-inch all-terrains. Now, one thing I want to touch on is you said the Blue Cruise. For 2024, the Blue Cruise is now 1.2 instead of 1.0. And that 1.2 gets you two different new things, which is...
Yeah, so it's your lane positioning, so you can avoid a semi-truck, or the truck will avoid a semi-truck, push it to the opposite end of the lane as you pass. And then the other one is going to be the ability to change lanes with the turn signal. So turning the turn signal on will go ahead and move around the vehicle, or just change the vehicle in front of you, or go ahead and just change lanes. If you do want to move all the way around the car, you have to press it again, but I think that's manageable.
Now, yesterday we got to test out the Blue Cruise 1.2, which gets you those two new features, and I will have to say, I do find that it is more refined and more confidence-inspiring, because I got to experience 1.0 in the Ford Lightning, a 2023 Ford Lightning, and I will say that I did have some issues on a normal highway day, clear skies, not a lot of traffic, and then for some reason it actually worked a lot better when the weather was really crap. Like it was very foggy going over the mountain pass back in Washington State. But 1.2, I locked that Blue Cruise in, and for no time at all, it locked in. I never had an issue. And then also if you tap that turn signal, it gets in that lane confidently. And then we tested if there was a car in our blind spot or next to us or just right off our front quarter. It just told us it was unavailable and it had to wait until that car passes. So it's definitely a huge improvement. And so that is nice for that 2024 model year. You get an updated Blue Cruise.
We spent about 25 or 30 minutes here on road heading towards our off-road destination. And that's where a lot of Tremor is going to spend its life, is on road. And if you can get it off-road, wonderful. But what is an off-road truck and how does it apply to your life has been something that's changed pretty drastically over the last couple of years.
Yeah, especially with how much more manufacturers are putting pressure on the off-road segment by releasing their own Tremor, Raptor, Raptor R, Bronco Raptor, all this kind of stuff. Ford is really leading the case in building a consumer off-road vehicle, and they have been doing so since 2009 with the introduction of the first generation Raptor. But yeah, like you said, today we're in here in the Tremor. We just aired down to 25 PSI. We're on the road still to our off-road destination. We're going to keep talking just a little bit about our on-road experience and some of the features in here that makes it such a good on-road vehicle, and then we're going to check back in later and see how good it is off-road, the type of terrain it's made for.
Yeah, it's such an interesting balance, because if you wanted a couple years ago to get a off-road package that was not a Raptor, it was the FX4. And now we have the Tremor, and we also have two different variations of the Tremor. It's basically the equipment packages. We are in the higher end equipment package, but we're talking about heated and ventilated seats. We have a heads-up display. We have Ford's Blue Cruise system. And it's ironic, I think, that we have an off-road truck that's also hands-free on-road. It just covers such a wide range. And actually, one of the things I really like about off-road trucks, besides just some added capability, which is never a bad thing in the truck world, is the fact that it's more comfortable on-road in most cases because the suspension is a lot softer.
Yeah, in most cases, yeah.
Yeah, now what you do get is a little bit lower payload, a little bit lower towing capability, maybe not overall number, but just as far as how it wants to handle things like heavier trailers. But it's a really good balance for a lot of folks who are not trying to max out their truck. And like I said, we're heading to an off-road course that you could probably do in a lesser off-road vehicle, but the fact that we have the equipment that we do, the technology, and a lot of this being standard is a great feature.
So as many features as this Tremor has for on-road comfort, it also has some off-road goodies that we can talk about now that we are on our off-road trail testing out this 2024 Tremor. And some of those things might be the 33-inch tires. We got monotube front shocks that are specific to the Tremor model, as well as twin tube rear shocks that are just helping this off-road capability that much more.
And things like the heads-up display that were great for the on-road portion have now switched to an off-road mode, so that I can see things like pitch and roll angle, steering angle, my differential locks, those sorts of things that are all up a little bit higher, so I can do a better job keeping eyes up ahead instead of down below. But if I do look down below, I also have an enormous forward-facing camera so that I can see under the rather tall hood.
Yeah, so switching it into off-road mode locks your rear differential and then gives you a couple different features on the driver information display. But on that main 12-inch screen, you do have that forward-facing camera with tire tracks, and you can see exactly where you're going. And if you don't want that, you can switch camera views or just go to a whole different view altogether. So it's definitely nice to have that big of a screen in this off-road mode. It definitely is nice. Going back to my own personal vehicle when I don't have that camera, I understand the concept now. I didn't know until I used it, and now I wish I had it on my car. But
it's just this interesting balance, I think, between low tech and high tech, because one of the things that you've always wanted on a off-road vehicle is the low tech solutions. You want the tires, you want some suspension, you want to make sure you have ground clearance,
differentials.
Right? So those are some of the easier functions, but now we have a lot more electrical assists, right? And the fact that these are all coming standard here and that you can kind of add more as you go along is really impressive. And again, it's sort of a bang for the buck thing. How much you think you're going to use it, what is your specific use case. The one thing that I think is missing on this, and it's probably the only time I'll cover it, is really the fact that for engine options, we're ever so slightly limited. We have the 5-liter V8 that comes standard. We are driving the 3.5 V6 EcoBoost. That's an option. What we don't get is the Power Boost. And Something like this, I think, would make an awesome overland vehicle because there's so much room inside. It's got a pretty standard bed, but you can fit a lot of stuff in there as well.
Yeah.
With that power boost, you could go just that much further because you're getting that much more fuel efficiency, especially in circumstances like this.
Power.
A little regenerative braking, just get some of that power back, and you can even upgrade and make sure you have the highest level of the Pro Power on board so that you could power up a whole campsite, a trailer. You wouldn't need to worry about a generator. Your truck would be the generator. One last piece while we are inside here, or at least while I'm inside in the driver's seat, I'm sure we'll be switching here soon, is the fact that the accent color is this like anodized orange copper, and I absolutely love that. I'm not totally sick of it, but I'm a little bit over the red accents as the performance color. So as far as everything else goes, the extra little bits of stitching and here in the seats and across the grill, which I'll just call Tremor orange, I absolutely love it.
All right, now that I'm in the driver's seat, I am going to do a little bit of off-roading here. We're in what they call the Rose Mine, correct, Travis? And this is a little bit more red soil than you'd see where else we are on this trail, and that's just due to some chemicals in that dirt. But we are in this nice little off-road section utilizing our front camera. You saw me just try to look over the hood. We have a front camera for that purpose. So I have my trail control on. You can press a button at the top right of the corner to activate that, and I set my speed to 1 mile an hour. So I do not have my foot on the gas right now, and it is driving for me. So I am fully off any pedals, utilizing my front camera on my big 12-inch screen.
At 20-degree angle.
Yep. We're at an 18-degree up angle and 6-degree to the left. That front camera is coming in very handy right now. And that trail control pulled me through no problem.
Well, Nick, we're just about done with the trail here, which means we're very nearly at the end of our day. And we've been in this truck for quite a few hours. And we've gotten a little beaten up, but that's because this can get us just that much farther. But all of that comes at a price, and it starts at $66,145. What are your thoughts on that?
A lot of money for a truck, but you do get pretty much a fully loaded truck depending on your optioning. And the only other thing I would say is, depending on options and whatever you spec onto this truck, you aren't too far from a Raptor. Now, you might be getting very similar options interior-wise and tech-wise, but the Raptor, you're not only getting different suspension, but you're also getting the Raptor name.
Yeah.
And so it definitely is a little bit of street cred. So it's definitely up to the buyer exactly what you want and kind of how you want to option this truck out. But it's got all the amenities you'd ever want to make it comfortable on-road and off-road.
Yeah, and what we haven't mentioned, or we have mentioned, is that the truck we are in is certainly not a base model, so it's going to be a lot more than that $66,145. I don't have that pricing right in front of me. If we do get it before we post this video, I'll go ahead and include it. But it comes with a number of features, and we have additional accessories on top of that. So we're definitely looking at over a $70,000 truck as we're in it today, but it is a full-size truck. Part of that option list includes the upgraded engine, and let's cover that for a second because this comes with two pretty good engines and both of them can do the trick, but we definitely appreciated the extra torque we get in this EcoBoost.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would have liked to see the Power Boost, as it is a nice powertrain, but that aside, we do get two engine options. The 5-liter V8 that you find in a lot of different Ford vehicles is standard, and that's 400 horsepower, 410 pound-feet of torque. So
yeah, it's no slouch.
No, God, no. That's plenty of power. Trust me, that's plenty of power off-road, especially. And the EcoBoost is even more torque. So that one has 400 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. So it has more torque than the 5-liter V8, which is pretty wild to think about.
Yeah, and especially in this off-road application, having that extra torque, it does take a second to spool up. So crawling, it's maybe not as immediately accessible. But when we're trying to get up a larger mountain, or we need just that little extra pull, especially if we had a trailer behind us. Like I said, this would be a great overlanding machine, and having that trailer, you'd want that extra torque. Certainly a benefit. So there's very little you can't get for your Tremor. And yes, like massaging seats, we were looking for that earlier because this has been quite a rough trail, and we don't have it. But that's okay.
We want to be pampered off-road, not beaten up.
But if you wanted that, we could probably look towards something like a Raptor. And I wouldn't be surprised, and I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's an option there.
It might be. I doubt it, though. Yeah, I know it is in the King Ranch, like we were testing out yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
either way, this has been a very capable truck. A lot of it depends on what you need to do with it on a regular basis. Thank you so much for joining us on our first drive of the 2024 F-150 Tremor. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns, leave those down in the comment section below. And as soon as we get the chance to spend a week with this, we'll certainly come back with more details, more options, and we'll probably spend a little bit more time off-road. Maybe not so curated of a drive, but we'll definitely let you know when that happens. Until then, find us on all of the social media, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and we'll see you in the next one.